So, I like cop shows. Some of them. Old ones. Some of the old ones. This episode is about Barney Miller. Barney Miller was a sitcom about detectives at the 12th Precinct that ran for 8 seasons from 1975 to 1982. Apparently, Real Cops reported that the show was the most realistic one on television. And yeah, there aren't car chases and shootouts every single episode. In fact, that happens very rarely. Well, you're never going to get a car chase, but it's mostly a lot of paperwork, non emergency calls, and hanging around the squad room bullshitting with coworkers. In fact, Barney Miller, not the character of the show, almost never leaves the squad room. You've heard of a bottle episode? Barney Miller was a bottle series, and that is part of its strength. Barney Miller was the brainchild of creator Theodore J. Flicker. He had developed a show called My Husband the Detective that ABC wasn't interested in picking up. He was then encouraged to team up with sitcom writer Danny Arnold, and the idea morphed into Barney Miller, the one we know and love. But whatever working relationship they had broke down over rights to the series. Bummer. Near as I can tell, Arnold ran the show, made the creative decisions, put in the work, did rewrites that caused taping to go into the wee hours of the morning. Flicker may have conceived it, but Arnold nurtured it. But Theodore Flicker still had a fascinating career. He started out working in the theater. He wrote, directed, produced, performed. Eventually he took all those roles and moved them to film and television. Jack of all trades, that one. He wrote and directed a few films, most notably The President's Analyst with James Coburn. And he wrote and directed for television, too. He did one of the best segments of Night Gallery called The Question of Fear. He did episodes of The Mod Squad, Streets of San Francisco, and Banachek. He also directed episodes of I Dream of Jeannie, The Man from U.N.C.L.E., and The Andy Griffith Show. This series made him enough money that he ended up leaving Hollywood because he hated playing politics. He and his wife retired to Santa Fe, and he became a sculptor. Flicker passed away in 2014. Danny Arnold wrote a few films before pivoting to television. He wrote westerns, adventure films, noir, just not what I'd expect from this guy. But that'll teach me to judge a book by its cover. He later wrote for McHale's Navy, Bewitched, and That Girl. He was also a producer for the first season of Bewitched and on seasons 2 and 3 of That Girl. Unfortunately, after Barney Miller, he couldn't really make a series stick. I guess starting with the ill-fated spin-off Fish with Abe Vigoda. He tried another show about a cop and one about a doctor. Both only lasted 6 episodes. Arnold passed away in 1995. The series starred Hal Linden as the titular Barney Miller, Max Gale as Wojciechowicz, aka Wojo, Ron Glass as Harris, Abe Vigoda as Fish, Jack Sue as Yamana, Steve Landsberg as Dietrich, and Ron Carey as Levitt. Now, for the first couple of seasons, the show was pretty racially diverse, with Ron Glass, Jack Sue, and Gregory Sierra. Sierra as Chano was only around for the first 2 seasons, and frankly, I didn't find him all that funny or interesting. He took off to do his own sitcom, which didn't last very long, and he evidently didn't quite gel with the rest of the cast on Barney Miller. Though if I had a nickel for every time Gregory Sierra bailed on what ended up being a hugely successful show, I'd have 2 nickels. He was the original captain on Miami Vice for about 5 episodes before he was killed off and Edward James Olmos took over for the rest of that show. Then there was Jack Sue as Yamana. Sue was Japanese-American who was forced into an internment camp during World War II, and the only way he got out was to join the army. That's just incredibly fucked up and horrible. After the war, he changed his name from his birth name Goro Suzuki to the Chinese-sounding Jack Sue because of the anti-Japanese sentiment in America at that time. He figured he'd have an easier time getting jobs with a Chinese name. The role of Yamana was actually written for Jack Sue because he had been a friend of Danny Arnold's for many years. Unfortunately, during season 4, Sue was diagnosed with esophageal cancer. It spread very quickly, and he passed away during the filming of season 5. Yamana is my favorite character. I just love Sue's laid-back delivery. I was so sad when I found out he had passed during the show's run. The character of Yamana would go out on calls like the rest of them, but he was mostly an office guy. He did the filing, badly. He made the coffee, badly. And he was technically second in command, but he did not want to exercise that power. There was one time Barney got suspended and Yamana was left in charge, and he was just horrified by the prospect. So our three non-white characters dwindled down to one. And, I mean, it's no one's fault that Jack Sue died, and I believe it was Gregory Sierra's own decision to leave, but the characters who were added were white. Granted, only two of them stuck, and those would be Dietrich and Levitt. And I love Dietrich, I wouldn't trade him. But did we need Levitt? Did we really? God, he was obnoxious. Hal Linden, born Harold Lipschitz, is a song and dance man, or at least a song man. His career began as a big band musician. He worked his way to Broadway, eventually winning a Tony in 1971. During his time on Barney Miller, he was nominated for 7 Emmys and won exactly 0. Ouch. After the show, he was apparently offered one of the leads on Saint Elsewhere, but he wanted a break from television, so he turned it down. As of this recording, Hal Linden is still alive and 94 years old. Barney is the straight man of the show, the only sane man in the room, you know? Think of him like teen dad. And the others are his wayward kids he has to keep in line. Even the ones older than him, like Fish and Yamana. He's a family man, and early on we saw his wife, played by Barbara Barry, quite a lot, but no offense to her, they wisely started phasing the home scenes out. The squad room was where the magic was happening. Abe Vigoda, who I'm pretty sure was born looking 67 years old, played Fish. And I've read somewhere that he didn't love the ensemble aspect of the show, meaning I guess he wanted to be the star. But when you sign up for a show called Barney Miller and your character is not Barney Miller, what do you expect? I mean, honestly. Growing up, I only knew him as the old man from Good Burger, and he lived nearly 20 years after that. Good lord, the man was unstoppable. I mostly liked the character of Fish, but a lot of his humor hinged on the ha 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 I hate my wife trope, which bothers me particularly in his case because said wife is mostly not there to defend herself, and when she is there she seems perfectly lovely. There's no give and take, it's just him relentlessly shit-talking his wife to his work buddies. Fish left the series at the beginning of season 4 when he reached mandatory retirement age. He did come back for a couple of guest spots, but mostly that was it for him. Aside from Barney himself, the other character in the most episodes was Wojo, played by Max Gale, the himbo of the show. He is mostly got a good heart, but he does carry some prejudices that were pretty common at the time. Mostly homophobia, but he does get better about that. He really, really loves his job. But he also really, really loves Barney. And if Barney is Team Dad, then Wojo is his youngest, constantly vying for attention and approval. And he just hates it when everyone fights. He's a ladies' man, which I don't understand, but okay. And he was also just kind of a big dum-dum. But I love him anyway. Max Gale is still alive as of this recording. He and Lyndon are the only ones left. Then we've got Harris, played by Ron Glass. He was recurring in season 1 and a regular for the rest of the series. After Yamana, he's my favorite. He enjoys the finer things in life. He's a writer, he's always after wealth. If we're going back to the family analogy, Harris is definitely the oldest, testing boundaries and kind of desperate to leave the nest, especially in the later seasons after he writes a book. But he is good at his job. When he ends up temporarily in charge after Barney is held in contempt, he takes to it like a duck to water, total opposite of Yamana. He ends up having a really fun odd couple dynamic with Dietrich. They do live together for a while. And as I said, he ends up publishing a book based on his experiences at the 12th Precinct. Sadly, he's not careful enough with the name changes and ends up getting sued by a sleazy ambulance chaser who is named in the book. Outside the show, Ron Glass is probably best known for the short-lived but with a very strong cult following sci-fi series Firefly and the subsequent movie Serenity, where he played Book. Ron Glass passed away in 2016. Then we have Dietrich. So the show tried out a bunch of temporary characters to kind of see who would stick after Chano left, and he's really the only one that did. Linda Lavin was on for about 5 episodes, and reportedly she was well liked, but then she booked Alice and went with that instead. Unlike Sierra and Vigoda, her move actually worked out in her favor. But Dietrich, back to Dietrich. Strange, dry, unknowable Dietrich. He walks around with his encyclopedia of knowledge. He used to be in med school. He might, in fact, be an alien. You just can't get a good read on him. He's not the most social guy, but he does appreciate his feeling of belonging at the 12th. He's very dry and sometimes makes jokes at inappropriate times, and nothing really seems to get to him. Steve Landsberg does a fantastic job. He was a stand-up comedian before Barney Miller, and he continued working as an actor after the series ended. He passed away in 2010. And then we have Ron Carey as Levitt. Carey doesn't have a huge list of film credits on IMDb, but he was in a few of Mel Brooks's movies, History of the World, High Anxiety, and Silent Movie. He passed away in 2007. Levitt was a uniform cop, always desperate to be one of the guys. He would suck up to Barney, constantly offer his help, and would get assigned up to the squad room from time to time. By the end of the series, he might have officially been promoted, unsure. I really don't like Levitt. He is such a pest. Let's go back to the family analogy. He's Cousin Oliver. No, you know what? That's too good for him. He's the family dog. Anyway, in honor of spooky season, because it's October, anyway, we're going to cover 2 spooky episodes, so don't let your kids listen to this, it's too scary. Now, honestly, these 2 episodes are only nominally related to Halloween or anything spooky. I'm covering Werewolf from Season 3 and Ghost from Season 4. Werewolf keeps popping up on lists of Halloween episodes throughout the history of television, but, I mean, it's not. However, fun fact, actor Kenneth Tiger, who plays the titular werewolf, also plays the man being haunted by the ghost. So he's in both of our episodes. He got all the good supernatural plots on Barney Miller. He even got to play Jesus Christ in an episode. Or at least a guy who thought he was Jesus Christ. What an odd typecast. And you all would probably recognize him if you saw him. He's been a character actor for forever. And he is still working today. Good on him. So even though these aren't particularly Halloweenish, I've got Barney Miller on the brain, so that's what I'm going to talk about. Werewolf aired on October 28th, 1976. Okay, so fine, probably intended as a Halloween episode, but it barely plays into it. It ran against The Waltons on CBS and Gemini Man on NBC. Oh, Gemini Man, one of Ben Murphy's many failed post-ASJ shows. I'm so sorry, Ben. The episode was written by 4 people for some reason. Danny Arnold, I think, just gets a credit on all of them because I'm pretty sure he did rewrites on all of them. Seymour Blicker and Tony Sheehan get the story by credit as well as the teleplay credits. And finally, Reinhold Weege, I feel like that can't be right, but I have no idea how else you would say it. He gets a teleplay credit. Sheehan was a producer on this show as well, and he was also a producer for King of Queens. Fun fact. Blicker only has 4 IMDb credits, and this is the only Barney Miller script he wrote. It makes me wonder if this was a spec script of his that got picked up. They did that on Star Trek all the time. And Weege created Night Court, and I can definitely see how this show would prepare him for that one. The episode was directed by Noam Pitlick. That also doesn't sound right, but I don't know how else you would say this name. He directed over 100 episodes of Barney Miller, and he was an actor as well. He directed for shows like Alice, Taxi, Mr. Belvedere, and Wings. Okay, let's dive into this episode. It opens with Yamana getting a call about a UFO landing in Central Park. He is bemused by this, as he is by most things. Wojo is lamenting that there are so many cops out sick with the swine flu, and I swear to you, I thought the swine flu was like a new thing around 2009. I genuinely, at the time, people were talking about it like, oh my god, this new horrible flu, but okay, I guess it's a strain of something that's been around a long time. Harris says that there's a joke in there somewhere about cops and swine, and right you are, Harris, right you are. Wojo takes offense because boy oh boy, he is proud of being a cop. The squad is out of coffee, but Yamana didn't have time to run out and pick up more. I don't know why this bothers them because everyone hates his coffee, but not enough to get off their asses and make it themselves. Anyway, everyone's exhausted due to being understaffed. Nick suggests an old trick he learned from his grandfather about staying awake. Convince yourself that if you fall asleep, you'll die. Okay, the old Freddy Krueger trick. Yamana, Nick, can I call you Nick? That only works for so long, you know. Barney comes in and tells the guys that they've been promised relief by 10 p.m. and also a nurse is being sent down to give them all flu shots. Wojo's got a little problem with needles, though. He's the OG anti-vaxxer, I guess. Fish answers a call from a man yelling, "Stop me before I kill." He gives Fish an address, and Barney sends Harris and Wojo out to check it out. Yamana asks Harris to pick up some coffee while he's out. Harris complains that he's about to go out on a dangerous call, and he's expected to remember coffee? I mean, he's gonna get it, though. After the theme song plays, Barney is telling Fish more about the caller when he noticed that Fish has dozed off. He tells him he can clock out, but, Fish hates his wife, LOL, so he's determined to stick it out. An elderly couple comes in after being held up at gunpoint. Poor people, it's their first visit to the Big Apple. And they were held up by a cab driver. I mean, honestly, the fine folks at Taxi would never do that. Except maybe Louie, but Louie doesn't actually drive the cabs. Unless they meant the movie Taxi, because Travis Bickle might very well do that. The guy even stole their traveler's checks. Do you remember those? I sure don't. Then the nurse, named Jackson, shows up ready to stab some cops. What a mood. Fish, Barney, and Yamana all get their shots like big boys. Yamana finds out that a taxi was recently reported stolen, so it wasn't an actual taxi driver who ripped off the older couple. Thank God. Reverend Jim's name has been cleared. Harris comes in, disheveled, upset, and ranting that the whole city has gone crazy. He complains that his $250 suit got dirt and grass stains all over it, and that the man they were called out for, Kopechne, claims to be a werewolf. Yamana dryly says that he'd better go put some papers down in the cage. Oh, Yamana, I love you so much. Oh, and Harris did forget the coffee. Anyway, he's still so upset over his suit and the state of New York City right up until he sees Jackson, and then he's like, "Hello, nurse." Wojo brings up Kopechne, who is very grateful that they've taken him off the street so he can't kill. He says that his grandfather was cursed and that this curse was passed down to him. Obviously, they don't believe him. Well, the old couple might. And Yamana is like, well, there is a full moon tonight, so he could probably be persuaded. Barney just tells him to call the psych ward. Meanwhile, Harris is flexing and showboating as he prepares to get his shot. Nurse Jackson is just unimpressed. But he keeps flirting. She's giving him nothing. She's giving him less than nothing. She gives him his shot and moves right on to Wojo. Wojo, who tries so hard to get out of it. And Barney, because he's so nice to his officers, asks if the nurse can go inoculate the officers downstairs and give Wojo a little more time to summon up his courage. Harris goes with her to help her out, and Harris, the lady turned you down, don't act like this, please. Wojo finally gets the werewolf locked into the cage. He tells Barney that the whole thing is obviously silly, but he's still a little nervous because he's Wojo and he's just kind of gullible like that. Barney gets a call that the swine flu is officially an epidemic. He is not thrilled about this because they've all been working for over 24 hours. Wojo comes into his office and begs Barney not to make him get the shot. He tells him that he faints every time. And Barney's like, well, tough shit, basically. We're short-staffed as it is. You're getting that shot. Yamana gets a call that the older couple's belongings have been located at Manhattan South. He sends Fish to escort them over there. But the wife really wants to stay to see if Kopechne actually turns into a werewolf. The husband herds her out of the room. Back with Harris and Nurse Jackson, she tells him that honestly she does think he's attractive, but she can't get involved because she's got her sights set on a doctor. Actually, she's got her sights set on 2 doctors. She hasn't decided which one she's going to marry yet. To which I say, get it, girl? Get you that doctor's money. Finally, Wojo agrees to get the shot in Barney's office in case he passes out. He doesn't want the rest of them to see it. It is now just before midnight, and Kopechne says he's starting to feel strange. Nick and Harris start getting a little freaked out. Kopechne's like climbing the bars and saying he's getting itchy, and this made me laugh. Yamada said, "Oh, well, that's normal around here," while he starts to scratch himself. It's not exactly like a funny line, but the way Jack Sue says it just kills me. The dude is putting on a nice show, but he's clearly not actually changing into anything. He starts demanding to be let out of the cage, and Yamada calls for Dad, I mean Barney, and Harris runs to get Dad, I mean Barney, and Barney immediately shuts Kopechne up because this is a police station, not a horror movie. And just then, the psych guys show up to cart the still human Kopechne to the funny farm, where life is beautiful all the time, and they're coming to take him away, ha, hee hee, ho ho. Before he's taken away, Kopechne tells Barney that it's such a rare disease. You don't see a lot of lycanthropy anymore. To which Barney concludes, well, that must mean somebody's making progress on it. Kopechne seems comforted by that idea and leaves with the nice young men in their plain white coats, presumably to go get his lobotomy. Barney announces that their relief has arrived and they can all go home. Nurse Jackson pokes her head out of Barney's office and said Wojo has indeed fainted. Barney sternly tells Yamada and Harris not to make jokes as they struggle to hold back their laughter. In the tag, Wojo's up and around and quite embarrassed. Yamada and Harris can't help but tease him a bit before Wojo and Nick leave. Nurse Jackson also takes her leave. Harris asks if he can walk her home. She says it's up to him, and he takes that as a win. Barney then tells Fish to go home. Fish gets in one more shot at his wife and then roll credits. I do like this episode, I just wish it had more werewolf action in it. I don't know, have the lights go out or something. More howling. I don't know, just more Halloween stuff. Maybe mention that it's almost Halloween. Throw a few decorations up in the office. Come on, give me something. The next episode we are talking about tonight is called Ghost from season 4. It has the same issue that Werewolf has. The supernatural element is just barely a part of the episode. This one aired January 12th, 1978, so not even in October. It ran against Hawaii Five-0 on CBS and nothing on NBC. And my dad recently clued me in that when there's a blank block on the time slot, when I'm looking up these things, it probably means it was running local programming. That makes a lot of sense, and I'm an idiot. This episode was again written by Reinhold Weege. It was directed by Lee Bernhardy, and he only directed 8 episodes of this show, what with Pitlick hogging them all. In fact, this was the last episode he directed for this series. Bernhardy also directed for What's Happening, Fish, Night Court, and All That. If you don't know what All That is, it's a kind of SNL for kids that ran on Nickelodeon when I was growing up. I remember it very fondly. He also directed 65 episodes of Webster. He was married to Janet Lennon of the Lennon Sisters for about 10 years. They had 3 children together before they divorced. Crazy. So let's see what this ghost business is about. This one opens with Yamada getting a call about a pornographic bakery, and I swear I've seen that on something else, but I cannot think of what it was. Harris waltzes in after getting up on the wrong side of the bed. He's followed closely by Dietrich, who greets him with a, "Hey, roomie." Yes, Harris and Dietrich are in their roommate era, and Harris is not happy with the situation. Apparently, Dietrich grows wheat in his apartment. Yamada goes to check out this bakery, and Dietrich immediately knows which one he's talking about. Dietrich is a freak under that calm exterior, I just know it. Wojo and Dietrich get a call to pick up a guy who's ripping apart his own apartment. After the theme song, Wojo and Dietrich return with Mr. Porter, the man who was wrecking his home. Porter insists that it wasn't him, it was the ghost who won't leave him alone. The ghost, named Julius. And Wojo just starts poking fun at the guy. But then Dietrich chimes in with one of his actualies. This kind of phenomenon isn't totally outside the realm of possibility. And then he pronounces poltergeist. Wait, that's wrong. Surely that's wrong. Anyway, Yamana comes back with evidence from the porno bakery. We don't get to see it, of course, this is network TV, but it certainly catches the attention of all the guys. Dietrich takes Porter's statement, and Porter says that Julius has been in the family for generations, that he died during the Revolutionary War. Okay, my guy. Then Levitt comes in with a bickering couple, a young woman and an older foreign man. You see, they have a green card marriage, but he's fallen in love with her for really reals, and she just wants him to get lost. Her name is Miss Morgan, his is Mr. Stefano. Levitt then starts kissing Barney's ass, who's politely trying to get out of the conversation, and do you see what I mean about Levitt? If he were at least funny, but he's not. At least not to me. Then Julius makes his presence known. A drawer falls out of the filing cabinet. Barney immediately blames Yamana, but he swears he shut the drawer all the way, and Porter's just like, see, I told you, that was Julius. The guys keep blowing him off and insist that it was just an accident. But he's flipping out, so Harris has to call the funny farm again. And Barney is still trying to calm Porter down. But then the coat rack falls over all on its own. Could Julius be real? Could it really be a ghost? Who knows? Barney locks him in the cage anyway. Harris and Yamana are inspecting the coat rack, and they theorize that, well, they must have just hung too many coats on one side, so it tipped over. Perfectly reasonable. Meanwhile, Wojo is taking Miss Morgan's statement. She's a sex worker, and Wojo is very judgmental about them. Shut the fuck up, Wojo. When he asks her about her occupation, she says none, just a very lucrative hobby. I like her. Stefano is trying to connect with Yamana about how happy he was the first time he saw the Statue of Liberty and how Yamana must have felt the same way. Yamana then has to explain, not for the first time or the last, that he is from the U.S. So many people make the assumption that he must have emigrated here. And Yamana takes it all in stride, he's just used to it. Porter starts flipping out again in the cage, much like Kopechne did in Werewolf. Evidently, Julius is, jumping on his back. When Barney threatens him with handcuffs, he calms down and said that Barney must have scared him off. Sure, that's what happened. An immigration officer enters the office about the Stefanos. He goes straight to Yamana, thinking that he's the immigrant, and says, Vietnamese? Yamana just dryly replies, Omaha. Barney takes the immigration officer into his office, and Stefanos assures Miss Morgan that he will take all the blame. She's flippant with him, and Wojo tells her to be nice since he's helping her out. Stay out of it, Wojo. She correctly points out that she wants him to leave her alone, and he hasn't been. So if he really wanted to do her a favor, he would have done what she asked in the first place and gotten out of her life. Finally, he does sadly agree to leave her alone, but then he turns around and begs her to stop sex work. And Wojo butts in again. Just leave her alone. I understand that prostitution is against the law, but Wojo's just being such an ass here. He calls her another cheap hooker. Stefanos takes great offense to him using that kind of language about his wife, which is kind of nice, I guess. Wojo then apologizes, but not to her, to Stefanos, of course. Meanwhile, in Barney's office, he goes over the situation with the immigration guy, and the guy laments about how tough his job is. This happens a lot on this show. They'll get some kind of official in, and they just end up whining about how tough they have it. In the squad room, Miss Morgan opens the box of smutty baked goods. Yamana tries to stop her, but she's hardly offended. He needn't have bothered. Barney and the immigration guy come out, and the guy asks Stefanos if they ever consummated their marriage. Stefanos doesn't understand that word, so Yamana clarifies with the dirty cookies. And Stefanos says he simply won't answer that. You don't speak about your wife that way. It's kind of sweet the way he sticks up for her, but you gotta leave people alone when they ask you to leave them alone. Anyway, immigration guy just shrugs and leaves. Without a confession, he really has no proof, so the Stefanos are free to go. And here comes one of my favorite Dietrich bits. He comes in just as the immigration guy is leaving, and the guy stops him and says, "Your mother is French." And he says, "Right. And your father?" "Dead." I mean before. He was alive. I love you, Dietrich. As Stephanos leaves, he thanks his wife for the new country and for the pleasure of having her for his wife, if only in name. She softens and says it was nice to meet him too. And she does say if he ever has any problems to give her a call. And they say their goodbyes. Wojo is standing by the door and she just stares at him until he opens it for her. I love it, forcing him to be chivalrous. Finally, the nice young men in their plain white coats show up for Porter. I'd forgotten about him, didn't you? This was a B-plot at best. Why was the episode named after him? As he leaves, something crashes in Barney's office, and all the guys are kind of nervous to go in there. Except Dietrich. He trolls them by sticking his head in the office and saying, "Hi, name's Arthur." Have I mentioned that I love Dietrich? And that's our show. I don't think these episodes represent the best that Barney Miller had to offer, but they're still enjoyable. And they're in that sweet spot for me where Chano's gone, but Yamana is still there. I kind of feel like the show isn't remembered as much as I think it ought to be. I liken it to MASH, and MASH still gets talked about quite a bit. Barney Miller isn't as good as MASH, but it still deserves to be remembered and talked about. Well, I hope you guys didn't get too scared after listening to this episode. I hope you can get to sleep tonight without having nightmares about werewolves, ghosts, or Kenneth Tiger. Happy Halloween!